Hey friends, it's Robin. Welcome to my channel. Today we are doing another recent reads. So I have 10 more books to talk about. There are a lot of DNFs on this one. I don't know what I've been going through recently, but the month of August has been almost exclusively DNFs or 5 stars. The first 3 books that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to kind of group them together because I want to preface them by pointing you towards Jesse's video. Jesse from Jesse on YouTube just did a video where they talked about police and military in romances. So I'm going to have that video linked down below for you. But the first 3 books that I'm going to talk about all have a main character that was in the military. And because of that, I'm not actually rating any of these books. One of them I did DNF, but the first 2 are Iris and Rogue by Eden Finlay. So funny little side story before I get into this. I 100% thought that Rogue was the first book in the series. It's not. It's book 2, and I literally didn't realize it until I was halfway through. I don't know why I didn't look at it on Goodreads before I started, but I had it in my author templates that I have over on my Canva so that I can track author backlists. I had it in the wrong spot. I don't know what I was doing, but halfway through Rogue, I went back and I read Iris and read through Iris and then went back and finished off Rogue. But both of these pretty heavily feature the US military in it, and so I'm not rating these books. I have a very weird relationship with that in general because I am not pro-military in any way, and so I usually avoid them in books. But I'm reading through the entire Satanverse and I didn't want to skip this one because these characters do tie into the rest of the universe. I have one more released book and I think there's another one coming, but this isn't a series that I want to go on for very long, so I'm hoping that this one wraps up soon. So I read these. If you are interested in reading these, I really do recommend watching Jesse's video before you do, because they bring up a lot of very good points about romanticizing these types of characters in not only romance, but in other genres as well. And then the last one that kind of ties into that is Change of Plans by Dylan Newton. And this one I actually DNF'd at 15%. I was a little hesitant going into this one because not only is the hero in this one a veteran, but the heroine has just gotten custody of her 3 young nieces after the very sudden loss of her brother. And children in romances are not always my favorite. This one just wasn't working for me. I didn't care very much about the characters. This is one of those cases where it was so obvious that the author did a ton of research. The hero was not only in the military, but he's a disabled veteran as well. He ended up losing the lower half of his leg and has been suffering from both physical and mental trauma from that. And it was very clear that the author did a ton of research on both of them. But I felt like the author was trying so hard to share that research that it just felt like the main characters were telling me all of this info dumpy stuff because they would be like, I have this and this is what it is and this is how it impacts me. And I'm like, it's great that you did all of this research, but it feels really info dumpy and not like I was not finding myself immersed in this world. I was so aware of the fact that I was reading a book. Book 1 was definitely my favorite in this series. I guess it's not technically a series. It's not listed as a series anywhere, but Dylan Newton's last 2 books and this one all follow these 3 brothers. I enjoyed the first one the most. The second one was just okay and wasn't a huge fan of this one. So now that those are out of the way, I read Employing Patience by Saxon James, which I gave 5 stars. I don't know what it is about this series, but I love this series. I say this every single time I review a Saxon James book, but her ability to write a low angst romance is unparalleled. I just love her romances so much. They're really soft and sweet and hilarious. This one is following the guy who started the Divorced Men's Club. His name is Art, and he got married on kind of a whim. Him and a boyfriend were like, yeah, let's do this. And then immediately realized that they didn't want to be married. And so his marriage wasn't really anything serious. But as his friends were going through divorces and breakups and stuff as well, he started the Divorced Men's Club. And Art is this really happy-go-lucky guy. He is supportive and there for everyone. He is that friend that is fiercely loyal and with you through thick and thin. And he is all about hyping up all of his friends. He has no desire to be in a committed long-term relationship. And he has an employee who works at his bar that he has this ridiculous banter with. And you've kind of seen it through the first couple of books where everyone's like, y'all's tension is really intense. And he's like, no, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. There's a bit of an age gap. There is kind of like a forbidden aspect because it's an employer-employee romance. And it is also by awakening. The other main character has kind of always ignored that side of himself. Art is absolutely hilarious. I loved their romance so much. And I had such a good time. I talked about this in one of my previous recent reads about how there is usually a scene at like a club or a bar or something where one of the main characters is like sitting off on the sidelines and sees the other character doing something, talking to, dancing, whatever, with somebody else, and they're like, no, they're mine. And this had that in it as well. So I really, really loved this. I know that there's another book coming out in this series somewhat soon, I think, hopefully, because I love this one. Unlike the Eden Finlay one, I want a bajillion more books in the series. The next book I'm going to talk about is Against the Rules by Brittany Kelly. I received an ARC of this one, and unfortunately I DNF'd it at 15%. Was going through that whole like DNF 5-star back and forth, and after DNFing 2 books in a row, one of my friends over on Instagram messaged me saying that we should buddy read something, and then we both DNF'd. So unfortunately, that didn't work out quite the way we had hoped, but this was a football romance, and it was the follow-up to Against the Clock, which I had enjoyed. I thought it was cute and fluffy and sweet, but this one it didn't work for me. It had a good idea of like what it wanted to say. We are following this heroine who is a cheerleader dancer for a professional football team, and she is constantly being told that she is not sexy enough for the role. And she is in Vegas with her other fellow dancers. They are doing this workshop. All of the women are like, let's go out and enjoy our final night. She is trying to push herself out of her comfort zone and embrace her sexier side. And she ends up meeting this guy, and the two of them hit it off right away. And you as a reader know that he is actually a football player for the team that she dances for. One of the big themes in this book is how poorly the women dancers are treated in this professional setting. There are these little clips at the beginning of each of the chapters where you are getting little glimpses inside their handbook about all of the ridiculous rules that they need to follow. The two of them end up having a Vegas wedding, and they wake up the next day and they're married, and they need to keep it a secret because she can lose her job if anyone finds out that they are married. But he doesn't want to break it off because he actually feels like a strong connection to this woman, and so he doesn't want to keep being the fuck up that everyone thinks that he is, and he actually wants to give this relationship a try. And they are going to do this like sex lessons sort of thing to help her loosen up, and she will be his like date and stuff to show everyone that he isn't, like I said, a total fuck up. But just nothing about it was really working for me. I found the hero to be kind of obnoxious. The heroine was very self-deprecating, and it wasn't my fave. I wasn't a huge fan of the repetitiveness of it. Like, we were 15% into the book, and all we were doing was like talking about the setup for the book, and I was just like, I get it. Unfortunately, I DNF'd that one. And then the final 5 books, I'm going to talk about them all here, but I'm going to keep this kind of short because I actually have a vlog that I will link up in the cards and down in the description box where I talk about all of these books. I read these for a NetGalley reading vlog. First was New Adult by Timothy Janofsky. This was one I kind of got on a whim. I ended up requesting it like on the 1st of August when it was a Libro FM ALC because I knew that I wanted to listen to it, and I was like, well, if I'm going to listen to it, I should write a review for it. And so I just kind of downloaded this one on a whim. It's technically the 3rd book in a series. I haven't read the first 2 books. I don't even really know what the first 2 books are, but this one was really cute. I ended up giving this 5 stars. I was shocked by how much I loved this one, not because I thought it was going to be bad. I had 0 expectations going into this book, and it was so freaking delightful. This book is pure queer joy, and I had such a good time. This is kind of a mashup between 13 Going on 30 and A Christmas Carol. It's not holiday in any way, but those are the vibes. We're following this main character who is a total hot mess in the vlog. I think I called him a disaster muppet, which I stand by. He is attempting to become a comedian, and he kind of puts that before everything else. He puts it before his relationships and his family and his friends, and at one point it comes back to bite him, and everyone is mad at him, and he makes this wish that he can get his dream, become famous, and prove everybody wrong. And the next morning he wakes up and he is 30 years old and he's a famous comedian, and he has nobody. His family won't speak to him, his sister won't speak to him, his best friend, who he has been secretly in love with for many years, won't speak to him. And he is trying to figure out what happened, what went wrong, and how to get back to his life so he can fix all of these relationships. And it was so great. I loved it. I loved the friends to lovers romance. I loved watching this character just like grow throughout the story. There's no real trauma or anything in here. It was just him learning the error of his ways and then him going back and making better choices, and it was just really lovely. I highly recommend checking this one out even if you haven't read the previous books. Next was The Roommate Pact by Alice and Ashley, which I gave 3 stars, and this was just a very, very average book. I was really excited for it because it's a caretaking romance, friends to lovers, roommates romance, and those are all buzzwords for me, but it did nothing. It had some really cute elements in it where the hero is writing the heroine emails and learning to open up, but the hero was a little hard to root for at times because he bordered on the toxic masculinity side for me, and just this book did nothing for me. Then I read Pestilence by Laura Thalassa, and I unfortunately gave this 2.5 stars, and I'm going to be sending these physical copies to a friend of mine because I feel so bad having all of these and not liking them. This is a post-apocalyptic series that got super popular. I don't know, it came out quite a few years ago, 2018, and then it got really popular on TikTok, like all of these types of books do. It's following the Four Horsemen, hence the Four Horsemen. We're following this world where all of a sudden one day the Four Horsemen showed themselves, and ever since then the world has kind of crumbled, and now Pestilence is riding around the world and causing disease. And our heroine tries to kill Pestilence, and when she realizes that he is immortal, shocker, he takes her as his captive and tortures her and makes her watch as he murders everyone very violently, and then eventually grows feelings for her, and then she forgives him. I don't get it, but teach your own. Then I DNF'd Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey at 4%. I might have gotten to chapter 2 on this. I DNF'd this book so fast, which if you watch the vlog, I was 100% expecting. The writing in this was a hot, hot mess. I hated the heroine in here. This book has absolutely abysmal ratings on Goodreads, so nobody apparently likes this. But like, I don't know who this book was written for, because like the heroine starts off the book by throwing a temper tantrum that there is a bar across the street that is taking business from the bar that her grandmother loved. And so she vandalizes it, runs away, and then descriptively comments on how her boobs are bouncing while she is running. And all I could think is, who the fuck are you writing this for? Because there is no woman I know is like, yeah, that's what I want to read about. Why do you think that all of us constantly think about our boobs? And then the premise of the romance is that she's been hung up on a guy that she almost kissed when she was 14. So 15 years ago. She's almost 30 and she is still hung up on a guy that she didn't kiss at 14. I don't know how I'm supposed to root for that, so I didn't read that. We ended the vlog on a good note, and I gave The Key to My Heart by Leah Lewis 5 stars. Leah Lewis wrote one of my favorite books of all time, which is Dear Emmy Blue, and I got an arc of this one. In fact, I got duplicate arcs somehow of this one back in December, and I just never read it. And I think at the time I was having a little bit of a hard time at the beginning of the year, and I knew that this was going to be an emotional read, and it was. I cried. It was a lot, but I'm so mad at myself for putting it off because it was beautiful. We're following this heroine who, prior to the beginning of the book, loses her husband, the love of her life, very suddenly. And it is 2 years later, and all of her friends are kind of pushing her to get better and move on and get back to herself. And she feels completely changed by this experience. And so she doesn't know how to be the person that she was before. Because of that, she is very much so isolated herself. And this is her learning to start over. It is not her going back to the old her, but instead learning to be somebody new and move on and how to accept that. And the kickstart to this whole situation is that she keeps finding sheet music at this public piano that she plays at, and the songs are all songs that are important to her and her deceased husband. And then the hero is this guy that she kind of keeps running into and meeting. And it was really, really beautiful. The part that I cried at the end, just in case anyone's thinking that this is like a sad book, this book isn't sad. It's not, it is really not a sad book. The premise is heavy, but it's not sad. I cried at like how beautiful it was at the end. There's this moment where the heroine accepts everything in her life and the hero is just there for her, and I don't even know how to explain it. It was just really, really beautiful and I loved it. I love Lee Lewis's writing, and I need to see if she has another book coming out this year because I need it. That is it for this round of recent reads. This one was pretty quick just since I did vlog so many of these books, and the next round of recent reads will probably be somewhat similar. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know what you thought about them or if you've added them to your TBR, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.